Welcome to Leading Large. I'm Anna ROUSSOS, and this podcast is designed to empower you with the skills and mindset necessary to excel your career within the construction, property, engineering, and architecture sectors. Whether you're embarking on a professional journey or seeking guidance, tune in every fortnight as myself and industry leaders will share practical strategies, tips, and insights to help you gain clarity and propel your career forward with purpose. Leading Large is your regular dose of inspiration and a guide to assist you in unlocking your full potential. I'm thrilled to have you on this journey. This is Leading Large with Anna ROUSSOS. I am super excited to welcome our next guest on Leading Large, which is Josephine Evans. Jo is one of the directors of the highly successful architecture studio, JPE Design Studio, which is also one of the oldest architectural practices in Adelaide. It was founded in 1851. Jo has worked for JPE for 15 years, and during this time she has worked across many sectors, including education, public projects, hotel design, commercial and master planning. She's been involved in exciting projects like UniSA Pridham Hall, the Adelaide High redevelopment, Playford City Tennis Centre, Mercedes College Arts and Sports Precinct, and now the new Adelaide Aquatic redevelopment. As a leader, Jo is excited to drive JP forward with energy and purpose. Jo, welcome. We have about 30 to 45 minutes to unpack your career and how you've become such an amazing leader. And with this, we really want to provide some guidance to upcoming architects and industry professionals. So I know we've already chatted for about 5 to 10 minutes. So I want to go back to what we were chatting about. And I do want to understand how you've managed to get into architecture, because from what you were saying, you actually only started going, your degree when you're 25. So how did it all happen?
I finished school a long time ago now, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I just knew I didn't want to be bored. So I went overseas and travelled, and then I came back and continued, I suppose, my job in retail at the time. So I was working for the tyre rack and then the body shop after that. But I went to Sydney. I was offered a job in Sydney and I just loved that. I've, had my company car, my Corolla and my big phone and had great mentorship. And of course, I was learning about business without even realising it. And by the time I was 22...
Oh my gosh, I was still so young.
I was the state manager of New South Wales and ACT. So I just really enjoyed working with people and I loved the merchandising side of it. And from there, I won a trip to London through the tyre rack. And I went over there and I had friends staying over there. And that really made me want to travel even more. So I left Sydney, travelled again, and then realised I wanted to study design. And so I came back to Adelaide in the 90s and late 90s and decided to study interior design, which then turned into architecture. So I was about 25.
But was there any actual pinnacle moment? What made you love design?
Well, I think I realised it was in my blood. My parents were never pressuring me in any way. They were very open to what I might like to do. So I just had a really open mind and I did meet a gentleman, Cora Crockiner, who's now head of Snowheader, who I did work with here. We met Cora travelling through Italy, my sister and I, and we did get talking about architecture. And I remember he said to me, you should be studying architecture. And I was like, oh, no, I don't know about that. But when I actually went back and looked at all my photographs, they were all of buildings and spaces and something clicked and I realised that it was probably the job that I would love because it's forever changing. It's got everything, culture, philosophy, design, it was all there. So it was a pinnacle moment, I guess.
So Jo, then you worked out you want to do design, and where did you actually study? Was it still interstate or did you come back to Adelaide?
I came back to Adelaide, so UniSA.
Yep.
And that was fabulous. I loved it. I continued working at the body shop part-time. And just because I had decided that that's what I wanted to do, I just remember sitting in the lecture theatres listening to the lecturers and just thinking, wow, like this is such a privilege. I was so happy to do it, and it just opened my mind to so many things. So for me to take that time to decide what I wanted to do or discover what I wanted to do was wonderful, because I was ready.
Yeah.
I was ready to study at that point.
And do you feel that now, thinking back, your experience, because, you know, we have, you know, a lot of individuals who are studying and working at the same time, but others choose to just purely study and not work. Did you see that there was benefits of you actually going into that retail, you know, working at, you know, the Body Shop, traveling? Has that actually helped in your career journey?
Oh, there's no doubt. Yeah. It's helped a lot. And I think you don't realise it until later that, you know, it's a bit like talking about work-life balance. You know, all of those experiences make you who you are. And I hadn't realised at the time, even now as a director, my understanding of business and customer service and people, you know, I was learning that on the job at the time when I was younger.
So you finished your degree, then what happened? Did you move? Because I know that you did work interstate.
I did.
Move into, was your first role in architecture interstate?
Yes, it was. At the time, one of my lecturers recommended that I go and see for an interview at Cox Architecture in Melbourne. And so I started as a graduate there and absolutely loved it. And it was really busy time. They grew from 30 people to 70 within 2 years. So for a graduate, I had the opportunity to do perhaps as much as I could possibly take on. So because of my travel, I had ambition.
Throwing like extra work, you actually wanted to take on more responsibility.
Oh, yeah, I did. I was full of energy, and I was just so excited about all the opportunity ahead of me. And I think that proactivity really helped me to get opportunities, because I was excited, I was interested, I was talking to people about what they're working on, new projects that were coming in the door, making it clear that I was happy to help any way I could on any project. And that attitude, I think, gave me lots of opportunity. And when I was given the opportunity, I just worked really hard to do the best I could. So, for example, there was opportunity to do an interior design for a TAFE building at Dandenong, and there was nobody else really to help me. So I just got in and did it. And I produced material boards and drawings and just went with it. And you know, it was really well received and ended up winning a national award. So it was like unencumbered opportunity.
There's so much I want to unpack there. But before we do, I just wanted to ask also, because we are finding, like, as South Australia is always known as, I guess, the state that's not really evolving and not much happening. And we do find not just in architecture, but in engineering, construction, that a lot of graduates feel they need to go interstate to develop their career or to work on the sexy projects. Do you think that's the case? Do people need to go interstate to develop their careers, or do you feel they can still blossom and do really well by staying here in SA?
I think you can blossom anywhere, really. It's an attitude. I think it's all relative. There are some fantastic projects here. There's a really high calibre of design and really high calibre of talent here. There are people working in Adelaide that are not originally from Adelaide. So I've always believed you bring the world to you. But I would say that travel and just staying involved, well-read, you know, connected, and now more than ever with social media. I mean, if I had graduated when there was social media and just the ability to be able to connect with what's happening around the world, you know, that just would have been incredible. So I think you can remain connected that way. And yeah, so really there's no definite, you don't have to go interstate.
So did you see yourself then during your time at Cox, and then you moved to another architectural studio also interstate, is that correct?
Yeah, so I moved to Perth after that.
To Perth. Were you always someone that was a high achiever? Like, were you someone that, you know, I guess the managers of that business could see as a future leader? Or did you just, you know, go into the mindset, like, I really want to know is, like, in those first 5 years of your experience, like, what are the key attributes that you brought that allowed you to actually pave a good foundation to then move forward in your career?
Yeah, I guess it's similar to what I was saying before around just being very proactive and genuine and authentic, because I think that's important. Like, I wasn't trying to come and take certain responsibility from anybody else. I was just genuinely excited and wanting to learn as well. Very inquisitive, optimistic, positive. I had energy. I was excited about what we were doing. But I suppose also I was able to articulate sort of a standard that I believed in terms of design. I really loved design and I really believed in design. And I suppose from my travels as well, and I guess my personality and perhaps my upbringing, I knew what I didn't want. And so I suppose whether or not I realised I was doing it, I was working towards being involved in the projects that I saw were most fitting to my values and to what I believed was great opportunities, and what could I contribute there. So how could I contribute was mainly, you know, really helping with anything I could, taking the opportunities when they came along and not expecting them, but really appreciating them when they did.
Would you say, Jo, like, are you a driven individual?
Yes, definitely.
And because I find, you know, it's one of the key things that I look for in people that I now recruit for ROUSSOS. And sometimes I don't think drive is something you can teach. I think it's naturally within. Where did that come from for you?
I've always been driven, but I also think that
was it a mum and dad thing? Like, did it come from your parents going? Like,
no, not at all. No, I don't.
Mine came from the parents. Absolutely, it came from the parents.
Well, maybe it did. Yeah. Maybe it did. But I'm one of 4 children. I'm the eldest, and whether or not, you know, I just sort of took on that sense of responsibility just from being the eldest. But also, I grew up in the 70s when things were pretty relaxed, and my parents were young, much younger than I am with my children. And whether or not it came from a different time, I'm not sure. But certainly for us, you know, we weren't given anything on a platter at all. But we had a great life, lots of family, lots of happiness, lots of laughter. And I suppose I never was given any sense that I couldn't just do whatever I wanted, you know.
So with if we talk about values and with your core values that you've been brought up from your family, what are some of the things that you feel that you've actually then brought into your career and further to that, your leadership style?
I think it's interesting when you say brought into my career, because I've always seen work and life so interconnected. Yeah. I mean, I grew up with, you know, a father who was a renowned architect in his own right. And so I just thought that was totally normal. I grew up thinking or seeing that to, you know, design really important buildings and work with government and, you know, to travel and contribute like he did, building up Hassel back in the day and all. I just saw that as normal. So it was obviously a slightly different structure for my parents. My father was working a lot, but certainly there was no sense that for, you know, his 3 daughters, that the world wasn't at our feet. So I think now when I look back and I look at my attitude to work and life being intertwined, I think once you've got a real passion for something, and I spent the time to discover what that was, and I'm a big advocate for that, for anybody in their life, whether it's part of their career or not, because even now some of my passions have emerged connected to architecture, certainly more around the advocacy space. So I think the drive probably for me has been more just constantly learn, don't put any barriers on what you can do or achieve, or more in the context of learning rather than new titles or those sorts of things. So I think I've found a pathway for myself, and now at JPE I can create that for others as well, where there's complete flexibility really to find your own creative freedom and find your own way.
Yeah, amazing.
So
through your career, so you've mentioned Dad, but did you have any other key mentors Like,
Oh,
throughout,
yeah, lots.
Yeah.
Quite a few. And
so would you suggest that someone actually, because I think I've had a few mentors too, and I feel like my mentors have changed and evolved as I've evolved in my career. Almost, you get as much as you can as one person, then sort of, obviously go into the next person so you can keep evolving. Is that something that you would recommend for people coming into the industry to have a mentor?
I would, and I think it's both intentionally finding someone and having a semi-structured mentorship arrangement, but I also think it's recognising that you probably already have mentors in your life and really recognising and appreciating that, because mentors come in many forms.
Yeah.
They come as, sometimes your own children, but also, might be people in your practice who are, graduate level or, just inspiring to you in some way. There could be people that you're co-leading with. It could be project managers you're working with. It could be, friends of the family. I remember having incredible mentorship through, mums of best friends of mine, through the years. So I think it's really recognising that as you go through and realising that, it's something to be really thankful for.
Yeah, and it's, I guess, coupled with that is having a growth mindset and willing to take on feedback and being supported by others. And
that's right, absolutely. Oh, and there'd be lots of times in my life where I would have been given feedback and have been really offended, really sensitive towards it, and really would bug me and be like, because I guess that drive that you speak of is also the expectations we put on ourselves. And I'm the last person as well that can really put a mirror up to myself and go, okay, really, where could you improve? I've gotten a lot better, and you need training for that. Like I have given myself time to have leadership training over the years. And then also you get older.
Yeah. I find it really difficult when my husband, George, gives me feedback. He's always right. That's the problem. And I know he's always bloody right. But I've learned to, to get better with that as well, because otherwise he's like, well, I'm not going to say anything because you just take it all the wrong way. And I'm like, no, but I need the feedback.
It's interesting you say that, because I have to say my husband would be probably the best mentor I've ever had.
I know. Okay, so working through, we've started off, we've gone interstate, you've done your studies here in Adelaide, moved interstate, then gone to Perth. And then what made you come back to South Australia?
I came back to have a family. Yeah. So we did think about staying in Perth, but it's the best decision.
Yeah. And you obviously gone to work for JPE, and that's where Adrian Evans was one of the directors. Was that one of the main drivers to join that business? I think would it be weird working for another architectural studio knowing that Dad's owns a really successful one?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I hadn't come back thinking that that's what I would do.
Yeah.
I was, on maternity leave, and I remember my father saying to me, look, we're really, really busy. Could you just come and help us out a couple of days a week? And I was like, oh, well, that's not going to work. With family, working with family, I don't know how it would work. And straight away I was, quite opposed to it. And then we talked it through, and I think Cora was also working with my father at the time. And really it was, in the end, a no-brainer. Like, we just got together and said, right, here are the ground rules. We absolutely shared a passion for architecture, and that's what matters. And any practice I've worked in, from Cox to JCY to JPE, that's been the glue. Absolutely. So I've been very lucky to have worked with practices that connect to my own passion for design. And so from there, we weathered the storm of the GFC, et cetera. And we actually really enjoyed working together. So it was 12 years in the end. We did work together, and I think, we built the practice, into what it is today, really.
Yeah. So you've been there for obviously a long time, and JPE are renowned for having great stability. Why do people stay? Why do people stay at JPE?
I think the next podcast you'll have to interview Peter Alardis, because he's been with the practice for 43 years since he was a graduate. And
since he was a graduate, wow.
Yeah, and he's always said the same thing, that it's our culture. We've got a fantastic culture. It's, it takes work. It's intentional, but we prioritise that. Absolutely prioritise it. We prioritise that. We prioritise design, and they are one and the same because it's our philosophy that, you know, great design, you know, has huge benefits way beyond a wonderful new building that gets delivered to a client.
Can you talk to me a little bit about culture? Because obviously culture can mean so many different things. And, you know, a lot of different businesses will say they have great culture. What makes JPE unique? Because like I said, it's been intentional. So what are you doing that's different?
So we do evolve. We're at a great size, you know, where we're 35, we can work on quite boutique projects, but then we can also play in the big playground with much larger projects. We continue to learn and do things differently, I think, where we collaborate quite a lot, and that's in turn helped us learn new different ways of doing things. I do think we do have a sort of an exploratory a philosophy behind the business where we can try new things. And
it just sounds like you do empower people. Like you've mentioned it before, you've given the freedom or the license to be creative and have a voice.
Yes,
because I don't see that with all the architectural studios.
Yeah, we've done a lot of soul searching as to what a design studio is, what are the different models around the world, and what is it to us. And definitely that's a big part of it, is we want to empower people to have creative freedom, be slightly out of their comfort zone so that they learn and are challenged, but they are supported by a design studio environment. So, for example, we are multidisciplinary, and the way our studio is set up is that everybody is intertwined with everybody else. But of course, that's curated as well. We also have clusters of mentorship within the disciplines throughout the open plan. So it none of it happens by accident. And it's constantly trialed. So if it's working really well, you know, we'll leave it at that. Or if it's not quite, we'll just make a few tweaks and see how that goes.
It's amazing how invested you are in, as a leadership team, in the business, but also the people, because I think one of the hardest challenge is, especially as you're growing a business, to actually work on the business and actually to find that time, because we're always thinking about we've got to deliver, we've got to make sure we're servicing the clients. But it does sound like you do prioritise that, which is also then a key secret to your success.
It's also a collective voice. So, for example, if somebody is interested in JPE but they're really wanting to have autonomy, and, you know, that might not suit them, for example, as to be sort of, you know, one of the collective voices, and to work from day one with other disciplines to work towards a conceptual framework which will lead to a design outcome. I mean, for us, you know, we're not working on, you know, individual houses very often. So it takes a large team of people to work through, you know, working with consultation with stakeholders and then developing a brief. We're very cognizant, though, of individuals developing great relationships with clients. And having strengths around design or delivery and those sorts of things. So that's important that we still maintain appreciation of the craft of individual disciplines, you know, specific skill sets that people have got, not pigeonholing anybody into doing certain tasks sort of over and over again. We have, apart from projects, we have quite a lot of other initiatives that we have in the studio, like we have studio committees which people can chair and you know, look at initiatives through, quite a lot of advocacy work that we do, and you know, things that, like our Artist in Residence program, which, you know, serves to connect people with, you know, other connected disciplines. And so to constantly be opening up the opportunity for people to think differently about how practice is done. And I think that keeps it interesting for everybody.
If you pack in so much for a business that is
35 people.
just can do everything. On that, like, so, you know, JPE, you know, local South Australian business, work on national projects, joint venture with other national and global architectural studios as well. if you were a graduate or even in, first couple of years, like I find that a lot of them will come to me and they do feel sometimes that they need to work for the biggest organisation and a global giant to really set themselves up for in their careers. What's your take on it? What is the benefit? Because you've worked in both now, working in something that's, global, national business versus something a little bit more local. What are the benefits and negatives across both?
Well, look, I've never worked for a really big corporate company, and I've always, even when we've collaborated with companies that, even if they're huge, like big in Denmark, they have a similar attitude to us. So it's all about an attitude and what the motivation is within that practice or that business. So sometimes the motivation is going to be just really functional projects that, are profit driven. You're going to have all sorts. You might think that excellent architecture is that, and that's great because there's a need for that in the market. You might have a specialisation that you'd like to look at, which might be health or defence or, really specialise your skills and be known for that, Do
you think when they go through their university, they start to think about that? Like, is that spoken about where you can actually focus on different things they can specialise?
I think not. No, not so much. I think university is intentionally broad and I think it really is up to the individual to start to think about if they're very interested. Often an individual student might start to really look at, say, some research or the benefits of health, architectural education. The South Australian market, though, is such that it's important that you've got multi-skills really because, well, now, yes, there's a huge focus in health, but how long will that last? Certainly, looking at the actual market or even the Australian political landscape to sort of see, well, where's the work
It's interesting you say that, Jo, because we were chatting to someone from engineering just previously and they said exactly the same thing, that you actually want to make sure they specialise in more than just one discipline, like, 1, 2 or even 3, because, the market can change.
Look, there's no right or wrong. I think, there's still, an emerging need for expertise. And, you can really find your niche. There's lots of niches that you can find. I mean, there's so many coming around AI and, working towards, regenerative design, climate change crisis. The housing crisis is now on us. So, it's forever changing. So I think what we like to have in our studio is more of sort of all the groundwork. What are people really passionate about? So, for example, we have staff who are really interested in the health benefits of design and all sorts of other kinds of specialisation, but it's transferable to community projects and and all sorts of other projects. So and sectors like workplace and allied health and all of those sorts of things. So I mean, I've just always enjoyed a really broad range of projects, but I've been drawn just because of my own values and interest. I've been drawn more into public and community work.
So you've moved into a leadership role, and through this journey, you've had 2 beautiful children. And what I also find that there is a fear among, I guess, young ladies, not just in the architectural profession, that they sort of feel, oh my goodness, it's almost like they're trying to plan when to have babies in fear of not being able to still move forward in their career, and especially the ones that are aspiring to move into those leadership roles. How did you do it? Can you give them any advice? Can you provide some comfort so they don't panic? It's okay to have babies. It's, you're still going to develop your career. How did you manage it all through your time?
I will start by saying, like, if there's any other sort of leaders listening to this, it's taken time for these conversations to be really out in the open. Even at JPE, now we are just openly talking about this with our staff and our, women and male and other, genders in the studio, because, it's now about just having this out in the open and really discussing what the fears are and what the opportunities might be. And that in itself is having an impact on changing flexible work arrangements and all these sorts of things, which yes, now more of an expectation, but that's because people can see the benefits. And that's both from, I think, a leadership perspective and also from a work-life perspective for people coming into the industry. So for me, whether or not it was because, you know, I was working with family, whether that made it harder or easier, I will always remember the meeting that I was in, and there was discussion around potentially me perhaps taking on a principal role, even though I was working 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And I just remember there being sort of, you know, the body language and, you know, sort of the discussion around the table.
So you already had a baby at that time?
Yes.
That's why you're part-time?
That's right. That's right. And there was sort of this sense around the table that, oh, you know, that's never going to work, you know, 3 days a week. And I just remember saying, just got straight in there and said, well, why don't we just treat it like an experiment? Let's just see what I could achieve in my 3 days in terms of, you know, what did a principal look like as well? It looked like someone who wasn't just working on projects but was actually also interested in contributing to the business through studio culture, design process, potentially winning work, those sorts of things. So I just said, let's just give it a go. And I suppose the rest is history, because I just carved out, again, I saw the opportunity. I didn't wait to be asked, but I carved out what I loved, which was looking at, you know, our studio culture and all the different things that we could do to, you know, instill this sense of excitement around design. And then that, you know, led to different kinds of projects that we were winning.
And how long ago was that? Like when you moved into that principal and that sort of role?
About 8 years ago,
I think. This is all pre-COVID and
or longer,
you know,
even.
Where the dynamic, I guess, of our industry has changed a lot, and so
Yes.
you're really sort of forward thinking around how do you actually manage mums or dads coming in and still taking on the leadership role. Can I ask, what made you go into leadership? Like I'm keen to sort of know, how did that, was there a pinnacle moment? Like, how did that process actually even happen for you? Like, what made them think that you'd be a good leader?
I think I was passionate about contributing anyway. Like for me, I didn't have
invested in.
Yeah, I was contributing beyond what I was being asked to contribute to.
Yeah.
So, you know, so I wasn't looking necessarily for a leadership role. I was just very comfortable doing that, and I was excited about it. And for me personally, it was stimulating for me to constantly be looking at, you know, broadening my horizons. So, yeah, I think that's the key. I guess I wasn't waiting to be asked, but then I wasn't kind of too bolshy about it either. Like you can't rush in. You have to sort of work out why and what the reasons are. Like what's your why? Like, why do you want a different title? Or why do you want another promotion? You know, is it because, you know, there's really good clear criteria that your company has and you feel like you're meeting it? And so
a lot of people just want it now just because of the money. Most people are
and
losing
there's
the actual why behind it.
And then there's that. Yeah. But I think money, as we know, only goes a certain way before you're not sort of stimulated, you know, past that anyway. So I think it's about really working out, like, what can you do? What can you contribute? So for me, I think I was always quite good at, you know, proposing, you know, why would I be a principal? Because there's all these things I want to achieve, and I would like to have the opportunity to have more non-billable time in my week so that I could achieve these things. And then you have to follow through. Yeah. You know, so if you don't follow through, well, then it's not really leadership. So,
yeah. And so, if you were asked, if I went and spoke to someone from your team, how would they describe you as a leader?
They would probably say that, you know, I'm the eternal optimist. That
I've been told I'm optimistic, which is apparently also a weakness.
Yeah, look, I don't think it is at all. Like, I just don't think you can be a successful architect unless you're optimistic, because you're constantly throwing issues and difficulties to solve. I think they would probably also say, that I am probably pretty intense sometimes, just because my level of energy, and, you know, I'm probably not subtle. But at the same time, I think I can motivate staff and clients, and I don't do that without understanding what that means. You know, you really, you know, some of it is just, yes, motivate people and empower them to be their best and give them opportunities.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, subtlety is also important. So I do know my weaknesses too, you know, where, you know, and that's why I co-lead. I much prefer to have a collaborative leadership style, because I think it's important for people to have different personalities and different drives, and then they can see that you don't have to be one kind of leader.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many different leaders and leadership styles, and I think that's wonderful too. The main thing is that, I hope that I help to build people's confidence by giving them opportunity, but also being able to be clear to them where they do need to improve. Or
I've always found you, Jo, you know, I've probably known you probably better in the last sort of 5 years, but when I describe you to individuals that were looking at presenting to JPEs, I do always say that there is the energy, you have the zest, and I think the zest isn't just for architecture, but it's for life. But I also find that I feel that you're quite nurturing. And so there is that nice balance, which is important. I just wanted to ask, because I think moving into a leadership role is a real privilege, and there's lots of responsibility that comes with it, especially when you're running a business, because this isn't just, you know, I guess you're not working for someone else, you're working for yourself because you are part owner. And, you know, through that time, you know, I feel as a leader, you have to also make different sacrifices to sort of move into the role that you're in. Can you share a little bit around some of the things that you've had to do, or the sacrifices that you've had to make, or the things that you still perhaps find difficult in being a leader and running a business and raising a family?
And being a really good architect as well, because that is, you know, the craft of what you do on top and continuing to nourish that craft. I guess I'll just start by saying, I guess the other context here is that I really feel like I'm a custodian to the oldest architectural company in South Australia and potentially Australia. And so there's that level of responsibility too, which, you know, we take really seriously and feel a great privilege to be, you know, continuous lineage of directors. But certainly, I guess it's loss of personal time. Like, it doesn't happen without hard work. There is no doubt about it. Now, because of my energy levels, you know, I've always chosen whether or not I'm going to, you know, really put that hard work in. And sometimes you just get carried away. But certainly there's no doubt that in those early days at Cox, where, you know, I was in a position where I could put in the hard yards and really resolve what I was doing, even within tight time frames, and working with others to do that. It was a privilege, but also a sacrifice. At the same time, I loved it, but I didn't have a family then. So I don't know what it would be like if, you know, I was coming into the industry with children or a different, I mean, there's lots of reasons to also not be able to just put, you know, 14 to 16 hours a day into your work. But certainly over the years as well, once I had children, yes, it was certain projects really did take a lot of personal time, and not necessarily not being at home, but just mentally not being able to switch off from it. Technology's also made a big difference there, where, you know, it's hard to switch off and not be checking things, but I'm much better now because I've worked out that I can, you know, we have a much better strategy with delegation. One of the biggest stresses, I think, is not being resourced enough and not having enough people. So, you know,
and it's hard too. Like, do you take more people on, but then there's a drop of flow of projects?
That's
and it's managing that healthy balance.
It is. But that would be the main sacrifice. And I've just been so lucky in my situation where my husband, Nat, is just incredibly supportive. Like, and I don't mean supportive as in, oh, yes, I'll do this because you can't. But
so he cooks dinner? No.
Yeah, lots. And he so supports. We're such a team. And he really supports my career. You know, and he knows that I was part-time for 6 years, and just because I was part-time, just the level of intensity of what I was doing within those days was still the best I could do. You know, and I was still wanting to be influential and achieve what I could achieve with the time that I had. So
how do you structure? So are you still part-time now?
No, I've been full-time for a while.
And so how do you structure, because the children, sorry, how old are your children now?
13 and 16.
Okay, so they're still demanding, still need to be fed lots. How are you structuring the balance? Because there is family and there's still work, and obviously you're growing the business. The industry is probably tougher than it's ever been because, like I said, it's hard to find resources as well. You know, when's there time for Joe and when's there's time for wellness? Like, how are you structuring it all in?
I feel like I'm better at it now than I've ever been. And that might be because I've learned a few lessons. But certainly I still have a little bit of help from my mum, you know, like every second Tuesday she'll still come and cook dinner for my children and we catch up.
I love that. As I was walking here, my mother-in-law called me and she's like, what do you want for dinner on Thursday? I'm going to cook a shepherd's pie or should I do schnitzel? I'm like, oh my God, I love you.
And look, because the children are a bit older, they are a bit more independent. So as long as like the kitchen's full of food and we're all pretty good, like every morning it's like, right, what's happening today, who's out tonight, you know, especially with Nat and I, like we both exercise. So, you know, I'm up, I do my really early morning exercise, you know, sort of 3 to 4 times a week, which is my time.
And do you find that, because like, you know, I'm the same for me, exercise in the morning before the kids wake up, and I need to do that for just to feel sane and also to, I guess, be my best self for my team, my clients. Is that what, you know, is it for you the same sort of feeling? Like
it's also really helps with the build up of any anxiety and stress that might come from feeling that, you know, you're not quite on top of things. Or I think also I've learned to just not put quite as much pressure on myself. I have excellent relationships, which are now experienced relationships with my co-directors. We're very honest with each other, and, you know, I guess I'm a more experienced director as well in that way, that I can give myself permission, for example, to do more of this kind of thing, like industry work, go to events, you know, not go to an event and then come back in at 8 a.m. the next morning, but actually just come in a bit later. And, you know, we've applied that back through the studio now, where it's like, okay, it's 40 hours a week, but we trust you, you know, like if you've got to go to appointments or come in a bit later, let us know, or let somebody know who you're working with, that we trust you to be working those hours.
It's,
you know,
it's really important that you say that, because what I've seen over the course of the last few years, that there is a lot more burnout, and not just in architecture, this is as an industry as a whole. And it's quite sad when I speak to someone and they'll say, look, you know, let's say they're late 20s, early 30s, they've had to give up netball or football because they can't make it to training sessions. And if they can't make it to training sessions, then they can't play their games on the weekend. And it really upsets me, because I sort of feel like, well, they need that. That's what it's part of them. That's what also makes them happy. But I feel that in some situations, they feel like they have to be that person that is working until 5:30, 6 o'clock, which means they are missing out on the training. But, I feel like it's more about having open conversations.
Absolutely.
Just going, look, on a Tuesday, I'm going to leave at 4.
And I'm going to make up the time.
And I'm going to just make up the time, because I don't feel like I very much do stress that your career, it's not just 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. You could be doing the same thing for 40 plus years.
That's right. And I mean, it's not blanket either, because you might be on a project that's really, intense.
Yeah.
And that's going to really give you a step up, for example, in learning and everything else. So I think it also is a bit of a call that you make, whether it's a temporary call or not, whether you can manage your time. I think having that conversation with your leaders is important, because not many leaders are going to say no, when it's a bit like what I said earlier about being proactive and coming forward with a proposal.
Yeah.
It's
where it's a balance for the employer.
Absolutely.
And for the employee.
But it actually looks good for an employee to be able to come to say to their employer, I've got this idea, I think I can make this work. Can I give it a try? And, you trust that this is, I still will be able to fulfill my obligations and clients won't be unhappy. So, very few employers are going to say no to that.
JPE have had steady growth over the last few years. And what I'm keen to hear from you is, when you are interviewing someone, what do you look for? Like, what are the key attributes that you're seeking from the individual that you're interviewing for your architectural studio?
Yeah. Definitely, I guess for me it would be like enthusiasm and, you know, I guess a sense of energy and wanting to learn and never wanting to stop learning, you know, even if it's a senior position. I suppose for us also it would be a good cultural fit because depending on that individual, you know, JP might not be the right place for them, like I said before, around, you know, the collective voice and those sorts of things and what motivates them for great design and what they believe great design is. So, you know, really looking at, you know, their sense of design passion or it might be technical passion. It might be aspects around them wanting to work with others, how they might work with others, just generally a really good attitude towards that sort of thing. I think an honest attitude as well. I
found that I don't feel like, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel like there's any egos. It is a very much a team.
Yeah, well, that's that collective voice again. Of course, everybody, you know, you need a healthy amount of ego, you know, because it's a driver forward as well. And, you know, I also like to look at all sorts of different philosophies and personalities and life experiences as well. So, you know, there's no one size fits all. You know, when you're in a creative environment, you know, you want everyone to be a bit different. Yeah, so it's also, I think, around high-performing teams or having a high-performing team sort of attitude where, you know, if you enjoy that, then you'll enjoy JPE.
So I'm going to give you the opportunity to plug JPE just a little bit here. And we've already spoken a lot around, you know, culture and a collaborative team. But what else? Like, what is something else that's unique about JPE that would make someone want to work for you and your architectural studio?
I think we're multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
So I guess the sort of traditional architecture practice would be very much sort of, I suppose, dominated by the architect's relationship with the client and the process of design being, I guess, more traditional. So for us, if you're open to it, open to the design outcome being a collaborative effort, but also the opportunity to have this cross-disciplinary knowledge and design evolution right from the beginning, that's what we've got. And what that's meant is that people with double degrees are drawn to JPE. You know, it might be urban planning and landscape architecture or landscape architecture and architecture. You know, we have an urban designer who, you know, has studied both architecture and is a registered landscape architect and is now passionate about, you know, what urban design could be for us.
So the next 5 years, if we talk about you, what, you know, some of the goals that you have for yourself over the next 5 years that you're willing to share. And then also, you know, we're coming into the end of the financial year, so everyone's going to start thinking about new business plans, but the strategy for JP over the next 5 years as well.
Well, it's ongoing for us around strategic planning. So I love all that part of the business as well, like looking at, you know, where's the landscape at the moment in terms of the economy and what the kind of projects that we've done and what that might lead to for us. So for us, I think it's keeping doing what we're doing because I think, you know, it takes time to be recognised for what you're doing, and I think we are, and that's giving us even more freedom to experiment and even perhaps clients being drawn to us.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect. I mean, 10 years ago, we dreamed of, you know, just having great design projects and nothing else. And now that's what we've got. You know, all of our projects align with our values, and that's something we dreamed about. So moving forward, I think it's keeping doing what we're doing and then being perhaps recognised more interstate what we do. So that's already happening passively through clients that want us to look at projects for them interstate. I think we'll probably be looking at expanding our urban design offering. And with that growing, I think that's going to open us up to more sort of master planning and that sort of thing. And I think we're going to need that in South Australia. I think there's been a lack of that happening. More collaborations. I mean, working with Warren and Money on the Aquatic Centre, like for me, just delivering that project. I mean, it's the Premier's election promise.
Yes.
that we're delivering.
An amazing project for the community as well.
Oh, and for me, it's, you know, if all the projects I've worked on in my career, this one has got it all, plus incredible bicultural design. There with Carl Telfer as well as Warren Amani. So we're learning many more technical skills working with Warren Amani. We've got an incredible relationship with Carl and others around bicultural design. So I think that's going to be a real focus for us moving forward as well. It's in the National Heritage listed parklands. Our landscape architects are working with us as a collective. It's got everything. So that's exciting to deliver that project. And I've kind of got my eye on Sydney a little bit as well.
For you to move? No.
No, in terms of really looking at the kinds of strategic projects that we might be able to win there. We're already working Brisbane, Northern Territory. We've just finished our major commission in Melbourne, which was Oricon's head office there. So the sky's the limit. But I think personally for me, I think it's continuing to look at how I can use my experience and position, I suppose, to advocate more broadly. I'm very passionate about the creative industries and the creative sector, and I'm involved through the Institute with that. I'm chair of the Creative Alliance Committee, and we're already looking at a couple of really key initiatives there which are going to shift the dial. So that's interesting. So we're going to be expanding the Artists in Residence to all practice in South Australia if we can, as an opportunity. And we're launching potentially a new prize in the Architectural Awards. So
So a busy 5 years. It's not going to quieten down.
And more travel.
And more travel.
Definitely more travel for me.
That's amazing.
And
so
teaching.
Good.
I'm about to do a teacher design studio for the master students at Uni of Adelaide.
Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
We're finishing up. We've got one final question, which everyone's going to be asked. But if there was any advice that you could give someone entering into the architectural industry, what would it be?
Any advice? Really think about what you want to achieve as an architect. Think about your own philosophy around what architecture means to you, and really do your research. There are so many wonderful practices in South Australia and beyond. I think your journey will be not straightforward, but if you're keen and open-minded and excited about architecture, then you're going to do really well.
And there's plenty of opportunity.
Oh, there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
I think the way that practice is expanding, the skills you learn as an architect, even if you don't go directly into architecture and you look at other related industries, I think the design thinking you'll just take with you, forever.
Perfect. Jo, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to having you on our podcast.
Thanks, Anna.